Times of spiritual darkness. Our text is from Isaiah 9, verse 2. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. Prior to both the Lord's first coming and his second coming, the deep spiritual darkness of the human race came about partially through the imperfect qualities of angels. The Lord had given these angels roles to play, and as a result of their inability to wisely fulfill these roles, spiritual disaster threatened people on earth and many in the life after death. And the problems went on for centuries, gradually getting worse and worse. Why didn't the Lord intervene? Why didn't he remedy the problem when it first arose? The answers to these questions can teach us about what the Lord's priorities are and how he responds to well-intentioned flaws. To understand why the angels were causing problems, we'll take some background information. First, it's important to know that the Lord does not have to rely on the angels. The teachings for the new church state, in everything generally and specifically done by the Lord, he acts both directly from himself and indirectly through heaven. He acts indirectly through heaven not because he needs their help, but in order that angels there may have functions and duties, and therefore life and happiness in keeping with the duties and services they perform. People like to have roles that they see as useful. Many a young couple getting ready for their wedding don't realize at times that asking friends and extended parts of their family to help with the wedding is actually a gift. It's not a burden. They're happy to be part of it. And the Lord knows that that's true of angels as well. They like having jobs. And so the Lord gives them roles so that they might have happiness and fulfillment from it, but not because the Lord has to have their help. So today's text from Isaiah speaks of the spiritual darkness prior to the Lord's first advent. This darkness was ended by the great light that the Lord brought through his life in this world. The words of the text are shortly followed by a familiar prophecy of the Lord's birth. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, God, Mighty Hero, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Spiritual darkness refers to a time when people are ignorant of the truth, and even worse, when they do not care about what it means to wisely love others. They're just caught up in themselves, what they want, what they need. And so their mind is in a state of darkness. Now, spiritual darkness can happen in an individual human being's life when that person rejects all the Lord's efforts to lead him or her to see what is true and good. It can happen almost universally when the people of the church on earth so twist the meaning and pervert the intentions of divine revelation from God that the church, rather than leading people to worship the Lord and live good lives, instead leads them away from a true knowledge of God and interprets God's word in a way that permits the worst evil behavior, supposedly with divine impunity. This was the problem with the Lord's church on earth but it also related to a role the angels were imperfectly fulfilling. Prophecies of the Lord's second coming also speak of spiritual darkness. The lesson today from Matthew stated, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the power of the heavens will be shaken. It's followed by a promise of the Lord's coming again. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. The teachings from the new church explain that the spiritual darkness prior to each Advent related to the quality of the Lord's corrupted church in this world, and also to qualities in the life after death. The life after death, or spiritual world, is composed of heaven, hell, and an intermediate place called the world of spirits. This intermediate place is where each person after death first becomes conscious. It's a place where at first people who have lived good lives and those who have lived evil lives are intermingled, like we experience in this world. But when there is order, the good people, in not too long, recognize their path to a heavenly home. And the evil people flee from that life and choose a home in hell. Now, an important idea that the new church teaches is that the spiritual world is not a completely separate existence from our lives here and now. The teachings from the new church tell us that while the Lord gives us the sensation that we care about things and think from ourselves, this is an illusion. We're taught no one, no matter who, human, spirit, or angel, can will and think on her or his own, but only from others. And these others cannot will and think on their own, but all do so from yet others, and so on. So everyone wills and thinks from the original source of life, who is the Lord. Nothing that is disconnected comes into existence. Evil and falsity connect with the hells, and when people are immersed in evil and falsity, the hells are the source of their will and thought, their love, desire, and pleasure, and consequently, their freedom. Goodness and truth, however, connect people with heaven, and when people are devoted to them, heaven is the source of their will and thought, their love, desire, and pleasure, and consequently, their freedom. Our ability to know what is true and care about what is good depends on us receiving understanding and love flowing from the Lord through heaven and the world of spirits to us. Specifically concerning our ability to understand the Lord's Word, we're taught, the Word is inspired because everything in it, both the narratives and the other parts, contain heavenly qualities, which relate to love and goodness, and spiritual qualities, which relate to faith and truth. In other words, the contents are divine. What the Lord inspires comes down from Him through the heavens of angels, and so through the world of spirits, all the way to humankind. The spiritual darkness prior to the Lord's two advents came about because the warmth and light of the Lord's love and wisdom were being stifled in the world of spirits. Prior to both advents, the disorder in the world of spirits was due in part to the imperfections of the angels in heaven. One of today's lessons spoke of the imperfections of even the best of the angels prior to the Lord's first advent. When the Lord's love and wisdom flowed through the celestial kingdom, there was no peace, since things in heaven and those in hell could not be brought by means of that kingdom into a state of order. This was because the Lord's love and wisdom, as it passed through that kingdom, could not remain pure, since that heaven is not pure. So neither was that kingdom strong enough to serve as a means by which all things could be preserved in a state of order. And what is more, as a consequence, hellish and devilish spirits were at that time breaking out of hell and ruling over souls who were coming from the world, as a result of which a situation was coming about in which none but the celestial angels could be saved. So, because the Lord's life flowing through the celestial kingdom was not coming through perfectly, it was allowing evil spirits of hell to leave their proper homes and fill that world of spirits, making it a dangerous place for people who were first arriving, and also creating darkness in the world. So, what did the Lord do about the imperfections of those angels? We read, prior to the Lord's coming into the world, there was among people and among spirits an influx of life from Jehovah or the Lord, which came by way of the celestial kingdom, that is, through the angels of that kingdom. This was the source of the power of those angels at that time. But when the Lord came into the world and by so doing made the human within himself divine, he took to himself what had rested with the angels of the celestial kingdom, namely that power and control. If the passage stopped here, one might think that the Lord intervened to take away the role of these celestial angels. This is not correct. And to understand why, you need to recognize what the Lord accomplished by his life in the world. The Lord accomplished three things simultaneously through his life in this world. By taking on a natural human body and mind from being born of Mary, he provided an opportunity for the vast communities of hell to repeatedly attack what they sensed was a flaw or weakness in him. Every time they did, they were defeated, and the Lord made his mind another step more perfect. As each community in hell was defeated, they fled from his wisely loving presence to their proper homes in hell. Eventually, all the hells were defeated, and the Lord had removed the last limitation taken on by his birth in the world and became perfectly joined to the infinite God who had always been his soul. The teachings for the new church refer to the process of perfecting himself as the glorification. At the same time the Lord was defeating the hells and glorifying his human, he also provided a new order for the heavens. Because the angels themselves learned through the Lord's glorification, were taught, angels of the celestial kingdom do, it's true, still exercise great power and control, but only in the measure that the Lord's divine human resides in them through their love for him. The Lord didn't take away their roles. He waited until the time was right and helped them in freedom to see more clearly how they could serve him. Now, prior to the time of the Lord's second coming, once again the world of spirits was filled with spirits who had led evil lives. But partially because of the weakness of the Lord's church on earth, they were not having their evils revealed. They were clogging up the world of spirits and creating fantasy heavens and working to lead astray simple good people who were arriving there. When we celebrate New Church Day, part of the New Church Day pageant is the image of the souls under the altar. These were simple good people who could not freely find their way to heaven, given how the evil spirits had created fantasy heavens that would lead them astray. So for a period of time, the Lord had them in what's called the lower earth, a place low down in the world of spirits, just above hell, to keep them safe until they could be raised up. So, there were these evil people living in the spiritual world. They had the power to stay indefinitely in the world of spirits and create these false heavens because very simple, but nevertheless good angels in the lowest heaven were joined to them. We're taught that the simple good people in the lowest heaven and those in the world of spirits paid attention mainly to the external actions of these evil people. They did not have the ability to recognize that what they were seeing was completely insincere behavior. This dangerous joining of evil people in the world of spirits to simple good in the lowest heaven went on for centuries. Again, why didn't the Lord intervene? Why did he tolerate this disorder in the world of spirits? The answer is that if the relationship between these false heavens and the simple good were, quote, torn apart before the appointed time, heaven would suffer at its lowest level. Yet the lowest level is the basis on which the higher levels of heaven rest. This is why they were tolerated until the final period. So what's this mean? It means the Lord waited until the time came when the true ideas that formed the Lord's second coming could be revealed. And through this new light could shine on the interior qualities of the evil people who created these false heavens. And as soon as the simple good in the lowest heaven recognized the true quality of these evil spirits, they freely and with understanding separated themselves, and the false heavens ceased to carry the fantasy of goodness. The images of fiery destruction and earthquakes in the book of Revelation were in reality an unmasking of these fantasies. So twice, angels are causing trouble before the first advent and the second advent. Why didn't the Lord intervene earlier? Why didn't he tell them that's the wrong thing to do? In the teachings for the new church, we read that the first law of the Lord's government is that a person act in freedom in accordance with his or her reason, which means according to that person's best understanding of what is good and true. When the angels have been poorly fulfilling their role, it's not the Lord's highest priority to step in using his direct divine power to institute a correction. If he had done this before the angels could learn and recognize what was needed to be done, great harm would have occurred to them. They might have sensed they were too flawed to even try to help. Perhaps you've had a time when somebody rather crudely pointed out a flaw in what you were doing. Perhaps that motivated you to do better, or perhaps you thought, maybe I just shouldn't try this. You know, we have opportunities to work with other people. We can see people that maybe are doing things that we don't think is a good idea. And sometimes the best thing to do is to say to them, would you like some help? And perhaps they're not ready to get help. Or sometimes you could say, you know, I've found sometimes it works better if, but again, what you're trying to do is help them freely see how to make better choices themselves. It's the way the Lord loves us. Despite all the spiritual darkness and disorder that occurred leading up to the Lord's first and second coming, the Lord focused on how and when he could help the angels grow in understanding and freely choose to better serve his will. The Lord is concerned with their happiness and usefulness. He's concerned with the happiness and usefulness of us all. And he invites us to love one another as he loves us. May each of us grow in our ability to wisely love in his image. Amen.